And once you bring your actual attention back, like that's all it is, presence is attention. Bring your attention back to the situation, the way your body moves feels different. The way that you communicate and the way your bodies communicate feels different because you're moving in synchronicity or you're moving in some kind of dance. You can feel the connection. When you're not there, not paying attention, it might feel like the person's just doing you, or you're being done to, or you're doing the person. And it's like a one-sided activity. So the emotional connection makes it feel like a mutually connected activity. Feel like you're moving together and things are in some kind of flow, okay? And you'll notice that if there's a lack of flow, then maybe you need to bring your attention back. They need to bring their attention back. And so how can you mindfully do that? What's up, fam? Welcome to another episode of Garner Growth. This is the second video in our sexual wellness series. And if you have not watched the first video, it's on building sexual confidence. It's not so much focused on sexual confidence, but it's very holistic. And it talks about how to mindfully connect with yourself so that you authentically present as confident and you're authentically attractive to other people and to yourself. That's where it starts. So once you start feeling good in your own body, it's going to translate to how other people perceive you. So watch that. That is already posted in my channel. So today we're going to talk about the 5 biggest sexual red flags to look out for. Now, sexual chemistry is a vital part of any healthy relationship. Of course, there's going to be different dynamics and different balances in each connection, but it is very important to have it and to nourish it, however that looks for you and your partners, and also to be mostly aware of yourself and how you show up in your own sexuality. So the 5 biggest red flags to look out for, we're going to talk about those, and then I'm going to give you some ways to mindfully approach them in a healthy way, and then also how you cannot repeat patterns and continue to find yourself dealing with the same red flags. Because if it's repeating, then it's something about you. Can't blame it on other people. It might be something that you are not aware of and something that you might be perpetuating based off of your perspective. So let's get into it. So number 1 is avoiding sexual intimacy with no explanation. So there's a difference between knowing, okay, it's either that time of the month, there's some other mental stress is going on, emotional stress is going on. When you know you're going through something, your partners are going through something, and you're just not in a space to be sexy, then that's perfectly fine. But if there is an aversion to sexual intimacy that doesn't have any understanding around it and no conversation around it, no explanation, then the first thing you want to do is be curious. You want to have a conversation. You want to ask questions and find out what's going on with you. And that really can just be, it could be awkward. Of course, a lot of times these things could be awkward, depends on the timing. But if you come from a place of not accusing and not jumping to conclusions and be genuinely curious, like, I wonder what they're feeling. I wonder what they're thinking. And not also, this is very important, do not take it personally and automatically think that there's something wrong with you, because that will create defense, and defense is not the best place to be having connected conversations. You're going to end up getting into an argument or stonewalling, and you're not going to get anywhere. So we want to be curious, want to be open, ask some questions, and also not make it about sex. If there's a sexual disconnection, the reason probably is not sex. It might be a mental disconnect, an emotional disconnect. It could be a hormonal thing, like something physically is going on with this person, so they're not feeling sexy. They don't have a high libido. And even things like that, really think about, do we have the openness and the comfortability in our relationship to express, I'm not feeling sexual lately. Like, I don't feel like doing it. Why is that? What can we do about that? Also, is there something that I could do in order to support you in whatever the root cause is? How can I support you in that and not so much worried about, like, when I'm gonna get some sex? Because when you do it that way, if you put pressure on getting sex when you're not getting it, you really just shut the whole system down. And I can say that especially for women, because we do need a safe emotional space to connect. So you could really just shut the whole thing down if you are too aggressive on, I'm not getting sex. And so figure out what the underlying issue is, ask some questions, probe in a very like genuinely curious way and be supportive with whatever the answer is. The answer could be you have bad hygiene and you need to be curious about that. Like, okay, like have I not been taking showers? Have I been eating something that has my pH off? Are you coming in me and making my pH go off? There's a lot of different factors. So genuine curiosity. Another thing is trauma is really common. So if you're not aware of your person's trauma, then that's something that you could also have discussion about or just be more curious about. But they tend to like really freeze up during intimacy and it's like a consistent thing. There might be some root causes there that are connected to past traumas. And so when they think of sex or they think of arousal or somebody wants sex from them, it's a threatening thing and not something to be excited about and gravitate towards. And that's a natural dynamic of sexual attraction that if that's not in your relationship, that's something that's going to affect the overall connection. There's this practice that I came up with. If you are in a relationship where you're uncomfortable talking about sex or it's something specific you don't want to share, you can write each other a note. Like if you're in a dry spell or if you're in a situation where you want to discuss, you want to have a sexual conversation about what you like, what you don't like, you can write it down and then exchange notes and then read it and then have a discussion. And it could be really fun. It could be a little game. You could split it up and write like one fact or one question or one thing on a Post-it note or like a index card and like fold it up, put it into a jar and then pull it out and make it like, take turns asking each other questions or using them as conversation starters. So that's just a playful idea, for you to try. All these are suggestions. I'm never telling you what to do. I'm just giving you suggestions. And then you apply what works for you and you save what doesn't for, save it in the knowledge bank or give it out as advice to somebody else that might resonate better with it. Number 2, the second sexual red flag to look out for is not having any conversations around sex. If it's a conversation that you avoid altogether, then that is a wall of vulnerability in your relationship that says, I'm not comfortable enough with you. I don't trust you. I don't trust myself, or I'm just awkward with my own sexuality. And so again, the little activity I told you before this with the notes, that's something that you could use in the situation. But it's something to be aware of because if you're building a relationship, right, you're building a bond, being able to talk about things that are vulnerable is a part of the foundation of any relationship, sexual or not, with kids, with business partners, with friends. Vulnerable conversations are like the building blocks of trust. We have them, we might be hesitant to have them, but then once we have them, then it's like, oh, I can trust this person. And then we have more, and then you start to build up this, trust, like this connection with them where it's like, I feel like I can tell you anything. And I know I can tell you anything because I've done it over and over and over again, and I haven't had any adverse reactions to it. And it's the same thing with your relationships. You want to practice having vulnerable conversations so they get easier. And so if sex is something that you don't talk about and you don't express your needs, you don't talk about kinks, you don't talk about things you don't like, then that's a wall of vulnerability that you're going to need to knock down eventually if you want to continue to build a relationship, a healthy relationship. Because sexuality is part of like our primal instincts. We're going to do it. We're going to want to do it. To not be able to talk about it it's kind of a big deal. It will be a big deal to me. Sometimes it's based on how you were raised. A lot of us were raised with religious conditioning that really like put a lot of shame and guilt around sexuality. And so you tend to still have that subconsciously. And even though you want to talk about it with your partner, you still feel weird about it. And so I invite you to cross over that threshold, take as baby as a step as you need, but purposely cross over that threshold of discomfort. Because on the other side of discomfort, you're going to have a feeling of trust and authenticity, and it strengthens your bond. Anytime you have an uncomfortable conversation and you cross over that fear and you find out that, oh, this uncomfortable conversation was actually good for us. Like, I was accepted. Whatever I said was not detrimental. And so now you guys are able to build more trust with being authentic with each other. And in any relationship, the goal is to be more and more of yourself. That's like the magic of it. If you're not being more and more of yourself, which includes being able to talk about sex and talk about what you like and don't like, then you're going to find that you become compressed on the inside because you are suppressing a major part of yourself. And that compressed gas creates pressure, and you might seem kind of bitter. You might seem kind of angry. You might get snappy. Definitely going to lower your libido. And so you want to just be aware of what you're holding in and then find a way for you to get it out. So this could be one-sided too. It could be one partner is feeling ashamed to talk to their partner about something because they're afraid of what they might think. They're afraid of what they might say. Might be like, oh, that's nasty. And I totally get that. You know, nobody wants to be shamed for expressing themselves. But again, this is a threshold you need to cross over in order to figure out, is this like person really, you know, my person? They really accept me for who I am? You know, there's boundaries because there's some weird things that people are into. We're not going to say that there's not going to be any judgment. Like, we're all human. So the person might judge you, but is it detrimental to the relationship? It might be. It depends on what it is. But at the same time, do you want to take that risk of suppressing your desires and what you like for fear of losing a relationship? And what you get when you do that is you get to keep a relationship that's not real, that's not authentic. Another thing is boundaries. Everybody has boundaries. Men, women, everybody has boundaries. There are things that a man will not want you to do to his body that maybe another man would. There's things that a woman would not want you to do to her body with her body that another woman would. And those things are to be respected, and that respect needs to be reciprocated. That, again, builds trust and relationship. It allows each person to be themselves, fully accepted for what you do like and what you don't like. And hopefully you can play around and find some compromise so that everybody kind of gets to explore things that they're interested in or gets their needs met. Being able to advocate for yourself is your responsibility, and you can't expect your partner to be reading your mind. So if you like something or you don't like something, you have to say it, and you have to overcome that fear of this might not be accepted. It might have, you know, a negative reaction to what I say and what I tell them. But once you do that and it's accepted, like, it's really a healing thing to be able to keep crossing over those thresholds of fear and then realize, like, oh, that didn't ruin anything. Oh, this person's still here. Oh, they still like me. Only thing you're gonna lose is a facade. That's literally all you're gonna lose by being honest and being your genuine self. You might lose a relationship, but if the relationship is based off of you presenting and being something that you're not, then only thing you're losing is a facade, something fake. So it's a win-win. You can also be inviting to have discussion. So maybe one partner is more vulnerable and willing to talk about sex than the other one. So the one who is more vulnerable and open should take the responsibility of being the invitee. So invite your partner to talk about sex. Be curious, ask them, you know, so I really want to know what you like. I really want to know what feels good to you. If there's something you don't like, please let me know, because I don't want to do things you don't like. That is not why I'm here. I want you to be happy. I want you to have pleasure. And I'm going to do the same thing so that whenever we do engage, it's mutually beneficial. It's something for both of us. And even, you know, when it comes to different kinds of relationship styles, like with BDSM, even when, you know, you might be doing something that seems to maybe inflict pain on the other person or could be demeaning to the other person, the fact that consent was given is kind of like I'm asking for it because I know that this gives you pleasure and that gives me pleasure. Or it gives me pleasure, you know, just because I like it. But the act of consent is a conversation that's had. And whenever you have a conversation and you give consent, it's another line of communication. It strengthens the bond. And you have this freedom to kind of explore and play with, you know, different sensations, different dynamics. But knowing that that person is open to that and also wants that as much as you do. So it really just takes communication. So that was number 2, being able to have open communication. If you're avoiding any communication around sex, what you like and what you don't like, then it means you're suppressing your sexual expression. That's what it comes down to. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to be a compressed, can of human gas and just explode in emotions or anger. It's not good for anybody. The third red flag to look out for is using sex as a manipulation tool. This happens often when one partner really likes sex more than the other one, and the other one's perspective is like, I'm doing this for you, and I know you really like it, which already is an imbalance. That's already, the red flag is there already, if it's just being as manipulation, because that means that we're not doing it for both of us. Like, this isn't mutually pleasurable. You're doing this because you think I like it, and then when you want to punish me, you're going to take it away. Or you're going to not have sex with me as a way to communicate your unhappiness or your dissatisfaction. And that, again, that's manipulation, because why can't you use your words? Why can't you, find a way to express yourself that actually gets to the root cause, gets to the issue, and not try to go like beat around a bush and not give him no bush or give her no dick. Like, it goes, you can use it either way. Let's be real. It is definitely based on the way that we're built and we're set up. Women definitely use sex more as a manipulation, and they'll use it to deprive their man of, sexual pleasure, which can make them agitated. It can lead to cheating. And not to say if you're using sex as a manipulation tool that's what's going to happen, but it just happens very often. And to me, it just doesn't make sense, because why don't you like sex too? And I think that's really the biggest question here is, if you're using it against me, then why don't you value it enough to like want it? Because aren't you depriving yourself as well when you're not giving it to me? And if that's the case, then maybe you don't like sex with me as much as I like it with you. Maybe it's not as good as I thought. And so because of that, it's not as hard for you to just deprive me of it, because it doesn't hurt you as much. And that really is the whole divisive thing right there. When you have something that is going to hurt somebody, it doesn't hurt you as much as it hurts them, then now, because of that increased value it has to them, you can hang it over their heads. And that is going to add doo-doo to your soul. You do not you do not want to do that. It's going to, okay, let me use a better mature words. It's going to poison your relationship, poison your connection. Any kind of manipulation does that, especially, sexual manipulation, emotional, any kind of manipulation is poisonous, because now you're not having authentic communication. You're not having like a genuine conversation and connection with this person that you care about. If I care about you, then I'm not going to want you to feel bad. And when you manipulate somebody, you're trying to make them feel something in order to get a certain result. And that is not an action of love and caring. And that is why when you do feel manipulated, or you either feel manipulated or you are afraid that you're being manipulated, it's frustrating. It feels like betrayal. It angers you, because that is not showing me love. You're trying to make me feel something instead of just like communicating with me. Let's come to some resolution. Let's find out how each other is thinking, how each other's feeling. But instead of even worrying about or being concerned about how I feel, you want to make me feel bad. And that is not good. And you're not going to get good results from that. So sex should be a mutual desire. And even if it's not mutual on the same level, let's say, this one likes it more than this one, that's fine. But when you decide to do it together, you're not self-sacrificing. Nobody's being a martyr for the dick or being a martyr for their partner. You are finding a way to, and then another thing could be flipped, where you're guilt tripping your partner into sex. So let's say that one partner's not feeling it and you really want it. And so you start to guilt trip them, which is another form of manipulation. I'm trying to make you feel guilty in order to get what I want. And that guilt is not a positive emotion. Why would I want to make you feel guilty if I love you and care about you? So guilt tripping is, in the sex that you get from guilt tripping, it's not going to be good. Maybe psychologically, if that's how you get off, but it's not going to feel good to the person that is giving it out of obligation. We know that we don't like to do anything out of obligation, especially giving of our bodies. The mindful way to really address this is to have more empathy and to be aware and accountable of when you are being manipulative. And we all do it. You know, some of us are more aware, some of us are less aware, and some of us are real divisive and you just do it all the time. And you notice that you're not getting the results you want, especially long term. You might get what you want immediately from this guilt trip, right? But long term, it builds up resentment. And if you're depriving your partner of sex, it builds up resentment. It's really important to reaffirm that intimacy is a choice. And intimacy is something that you share. It's not something that you sacrifice and give when they're good. It's not a treat. It's not a weapon, you know, and those things are really important to be aware of so that you're not like low-key poisoning your relationship. And by low-key, I mean, you're not doing it on purpose per se, but you have certain habits in place that you are not completely aware of. You're not aware of the impact that they're having on your relationships. And then you wonder why things end up in like, you know, these repetitive situations. We have to take accountability for how we communicate. And if that communication involves manipulation, which is like nonverbal communication for the most part, reassess, like, do I really want this person to feel bad? I love this person, but I want this from them. And I want to get it from them. And in order to get it, I'm going to make them feel bad. That don't sound right, right? So sometimes you just gotta like dial it back, you know, or like reverse engineer what you're doing, what your tactics are. And instead of having a tactic to get what you want, do the hard thing and have a conversation. Do the hard thing and express genuinely what you want, what your needs are, and how you're feeling. And if that's really hard for you to do, the simplest thing you can do is say, hey, I know I want this. I don't know how to ask for it, but this is what I'm feeling. And a lot of times your partner, your person can help you work your way back just through conversation. And you can kind of like, they can talk you through it. You can talk yourself through it just by having somebody listening to you and providing that space for you to just kind of talk out loud and reflect on yourself and what your needs are versus manipulation. That's just gonna build resentment. We don't want that. So the fourth red flag is a significant mismatch in libido and desire. If you're in a relationship where this person's libido is up here and this one's down here, then the need for compromise is huge. Of course, ideally, we would be compatible where I want it when you want it, or like I can get myself to get aroused if you're aroused and just kind of be able to make it work, right? But if there's like a person that's very not sexual, doesn't have a high libido, and then a person that has a high libido, that's something that you really want to be aware of early on. It could change, definitely could fluctuate because there's hormonal things, there's lifestyle things. We're going to talk about that later on, which lifestyle things really affect your desire and libido. But there needs to be an effort to find balance. And especially if you are committed in this relationship, you're going to want to think about long term. How does this look if we're so mismatched? How can we compromise? And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. So you have to find a way to have a conversation with your persons and figure out how can we have enough sex so that you're satisfied, or even like enhance the sex so that it's more satisfying every time you do it or each time you do it, versus just kind of like having it frequently enough, but it's not satisfying. So it doesn't have to be a frequency all the time. It's more of like overall satisfaction. It could be it's really intense, or we have longer sessions of really good intimacy. And instead of having like, we do it, 5 times a week, 3 times a week, and it's just kind of like quickies, like scratching an itch, but the person gets off, they get what they need. And so you want to think about what what balance looks like in your relationship, and then find a way to work towards it. And then if you realize that you can't, this might be something that could be a deal breaker, right? If you need to have some kind of surrogacy involved, some kind of alternative lifestyle involved where the person can get their needs met. Like, I'm just throwing things out there. There's plenty of different options to get your needs met, but it has to work for you in an honest and genuine way through conversation, not a sneaky link. Not talking about doing sneaky link stuff, because that again is going to poison your relationship and it's a lot of work managing those things. So if you can do it honestly, please. If you want to keep your relationship. Because what happens if there is no effort to reciprocate or find balance is the person that has a high libido is going to be starving, and they're going to build resentment towards that person. And the person that doesn't have the high libido might build resentment because they're sick of you asking, and they feel like you want something from them all the time that they can't give you. And it also becomes draining. So if there's a significant mismatch in libido, here's some ways you can work through it. You want to work as a team and figure out, how can we make this work? How can we both be satisfied and have our needs met and nobody be starving or build resentment? And this will fluctuate. Sometimes the person will be starving. Sometimes the other person will be kind of annoyed because they know that you want sex and they don't want to do it. So we can avoid those feelings altogether, but you can definitely have some things in place and have certain habits that allow you to not have it happen so much. And then also, when you do put an effort to find a compromise and work with each other, it just builds the bond and it builds the love and intimacy. And it says, like, I'm willing to accept you as you are, so let's find a solution, instead of saying, yo, this is not gonna work, let's go. If it is egregious and you're like, nah, I don't want to deal with this, choose your battles. Choose your battles, but it's better to do this early on in the relationship. So if you feel like that red flag is waving in the beginning, then have that conversation up front and see what the potential is of making it work. Another thing is you can find alternative ways to connect so that overall needs for connection is still met. And then if it's something that, a long-term issue where you've been together for a while and now this like libido mismatch has happened, then you can try sex therapy and couples counseling or a mixture of both. And that can help to reinvigorate things. Also think about why the libido might be low and then why the libido might be high. If it's normal high, if it's hypersexual, maybe lifestyle changes has something to do with it. There might be some hormonal imbalances that have something to do with the imbalances or the differences in libido. So it's not always just like, let's find a way, to do it with certain habits. Sometimes it is like deeper layers to libido, because libido it's holistic, it's psychological, it's emotional, and it's physical. And there is factors like circulation and things like overall fitness that is going to contribute to your libido. Okay? So the fifth red flag to look out for is when there's no emotional connection during sex. And despite men and women being different as far as emotional needs or emotional expression, as humans in relationships, we do require an emotional bond. Like, there's hormones and everything that contribute to the science of why we need an emotional bond. And in order to have an emotional bond, it doesn't mean like it has to be lovey-dovey, like, soft, sappy. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. Emotional bond typically is trust, comfortability, like the ability to be vulnerable during sex. So let's say if you're doing it with your partner and he goes soft, you would ideally be in a relationship where that happening, it might be embarrassing for him, but he's not going to get shamed. He's not going to think that, the person doesn't love him anymore because his dick got soft. And it's not going to be a running joke. It's not going to be a weapon that's formed against him. Okay? If the woman is dry, you're not going to make fun of her, make her feel broken. Emotional connection is the ability to be vulnerable and to be trusting during the activity. So you're engaged, you're having sex, you're cuddling, you feel close with that person. You just feel like you could trust them, that you could deal with whatever happens in the situation. It could be a funny thing that happened during sex. It could be an embarrassing thing. It could be, a messy thing. It could be something that's very highly aroused, which is another form of vulnerability, where you're just really, really aroused. Really want to turn a woman on, then, you got to hit the points. Mental connection, emotional connection, physical connection. If the emotional connection is missing, then it could feel very mechanical. And that's really what I'm talking about too. The lack of emotional connection could lead to mechanical feeling sex, or you feel used, you feel like an object. And in order to kind of address those things, it doesn't mean that you have to like hug for 5 minutes before you have sex. It is more just the feeling of being present, really. That's all it is. The feeling of being present, You're here, you're engaged in it, you're not like disconnected, disassociated from your body while we're having sex. And everybody can do that, no matter what your gender is. You can disassociate during sex, and it happens very often. You might do it pretty often and not realize it. But if you're like in your head a lot, but like the sex is happening to your body and you're kind of just like allowing it to happen, that is a form of emotional disconnection because you're not really there. And once you bring your actual attention back, like that's all it is, presence is attention. Bring your attention back to the situation, the way your body moves feels different. The way that you communicate and the way your bodies communicate feels different because you're moving in synchronicity or you're moving in some kind of dance. You can feel the connection. When you're not there, not paying attention, it might feel like the person's just doing you or you're being done to or you're doing the person. And it's like a one-sided activity. So the emotional connection makes it feel like a mutually connected activity, feel like you're moving together and things are in some kind of flow, okay? And you'll notice that if there's a lack of flow, then maybe you need to bring your attention back, they need to bring their attention back. And so how can you mindfully do that during sex? You could take a deep breath. You don't even have to say like, let's take a deep breath together and, you know, be very much like a hippie. You could just do it yourself and automatically, it's like a yawn. The other person will do it. It might not be like you did it, but like it happens. Try it. Try it and tell me I'm wrong. But it's just like a yawn. If you take a deep breath, like, or like with your mouth open, you know, usually doing it with your mouth open, but just do that. And it shifts, it resets the presence because it's like an alarm that goes off that says, I brought myself back to my body from being distracted. And then the other person's like, oh, they're back in their body. Let me go join them. Let me get back in my body too. Okay, now we're back in our bodies. And because of how we're conditioned in our society, we're overstimulated, y'all. You know, it's easy for us to get distracted. It's not even a thing that we do on purpose. Sometimes you're just distracted. You know, it's like ADD. And just because you're having sex doesn't mean that mental habit, that mental tendency goes away. So you might notice, you actually could use sex as a way to increase your mindfulness and increase your ability to focus because it is very physical. You can feel, you have enhanced sensation when you're present versus when you're distracted. So it's really motivating to use sex, the situation of sex, the activity, as a mindfulness practice in itself. And when you do that, you will find that you have automatically a more feeling of being emotionally connected. And one of my favorite ways to increase emotional connection is what I just mentioned, which is using body awareness, sensations. You're having something that's very pleasurable typically, or you're just feeling a lot of sensations. So putting your attention on that and just relaxing into your body so you can feel more is a mindfulness practice and automatically gonna have more presence. So the last part of this video, those are the 5 red flags, y'all. Those are the 5 red flags. So the 5 red flags were avoiding physical intimacy without any explanation. So you're just like, yo, what's going on? Are you running from me? And not in the good way. Running like avoiding having sex with your partner without saying nothing. Could be very confusing and it could feel rejecting. Number 2 is a lack of communication around sex. If you do not feel comfortable having conversations and saying what you like, expressing what you do like, don't like, talking about your kinks, things you want to try, that is a threshold of vulnerability that if you have a committed relationship, any relationship, you want to be able to be yourself, right? And so having conversations around sex are vulnerable. A lot of times we have conditioned guilt and shame around sex. And so it prevents us or makes us hesitant to do that in our relationships. 3rd red flag, using sex as a manipulation tool. That is it's weaponizing something that's supposed to be mutually pleasurable and supposed to be good for you. Don't weaponize it. It's like, you know, weaponizing words. When you know you can hurt somebody with words, but you also say that you love them and care about them, those are like serving 2 masters, right? So you want to be accountable if you are using it as a manipulation tool and be aware if you're being manipulated and bring it to a conversation. You got to call it out. You got to let this person know this is happening and it ain't right. What are we going to do about it? Sometimes it's like, all you gotta do. The fourth red flag is the fourth red flag is if there's a significant mismatch in libido. Then there's a need to have a conversation around how can we both get our needs met, because then you don't want to have resentment and suppression of libido, right? Resentment from the person wanting something that you don't want to give them. They want it too much, or they want it too often, more than you're willing to give them. And then you have somebody who's starving sexually and they want to stay committed in this relationship, but they're not getting their sexual needs met. And that can be overall agitating to the whole system. Especially when you're in a committed relationship, it's like, I committed to getting this need met from you. Like, sometimes it's one of the biggest arguments around monogamy. Is like, you signed up to be with this person and you have needs that are very valid, and they're holistic needs. Like, sex is not just a physical need, because when you don't have it, you feel less connected. You feel mentally maybe less clear, foggy, agitated, could be more aggressive. And this goes both ways. Like, women as well have sexual frustration. I'm not talking about just men. Yeah, okay? There's plenty of women out there who have not had enough sex and they are frustrated and they're angry. Okay? They're pissed off. They want some dick. And so we want to be aware of those discrepancies in libido and figure out if it's something that you can work with, if you can't. And long term, what does that look like? Long term, am I going to be able to continue, to meet you halfway and compromise? Or are we going to end up, in some kind of just dissatisfaction that ruins the relationship? Number 5 is no emotional connection during sex. And remember, emotional connection doesn't have to be emotional. What I'm talking about is being able to be vulnerable and being present. Just having your attention there while you're doing it is really that simple. That's the basis of it. Having your attention there while you're doing it, it helps each other feel seen, and you're paying attention to what you're feeling and what they're feeling, and so you're actually able to have more satisfying experience because you're not just going through the motions. Whenever you're just going through the motions, you're not really engaged in the motions, and so you end up not being satisfied mentally, emotionally, physically, none of that, because you weren't even there to report, to play the game. It's like you came and you sat on a bench the whole time. You didn't even want to play. And when I don't watch sports enough to continue with this metaphor, but you get what I'm saying. And so those are the 5 red flags. So I want to close this off by bringing some awareness to not repeating patterns, because these red flags show up often. If you don't address them, then it's like they keep repeating in your relationships, and you're like, is it me? What am I doing differently? And I know specifically there was one of these that kept repeating for me, and I was like, okay, so it can't be all of them. What is it? What is it about me? And I had to do some deep diving, some self-work, some inner work, figure out the root cause of my dissatisfaction and work on that, realizing it had nothing to do with the other person. And this is what you'll find too. If you're encountering the same red flags, it's a lot less to do with that person. It's not that person's fault. They're just being, they're being themselves where they're at, and you're being yourself where you're at. And if that's not matching up, then you're going to have some unhappiness, dissatisfaction. You have to control what you know you have control over, which is yourself, and the way that you think, the way that you perceive, dealing with your own perspective or core wounds of things, whether it's fear of abandonment, unworthiness, whether it's some trauma that doesn't allow you to be as intimate and vulnerable as you would like to be. Those are all things that you can work on and things that you can work towards. But at the same time, you want to accept yourself as you are right now. And the best thing you can do is love yourself, accept yourself, and then also love and accept that person. And see, okay, in this space of love, from this place of love and acceptance, what can we do to make this better, make this work? Do we want to put in the work and effort to make this work? Because sometimes differences are so big. Like, egregious is my word right now, you guys. I'm going to say egregious because it's my word this month. So if the differences are so egregious, then you might find that like this is not a battle that I want to fight, or this is not a healing journey that I want to go on with this person. We're not going to be equally yoked in our healing journeys. And so for me to join you on yours, it would feel like, it might make me feel like I'm regressing, or it might propel me forward. It might inspire me and actually push me to be a better version of myself. And so you just gotta like use your own discernment and trust yourself. Trust your decisions, but do it from a place of love. I find that that's the best place. Don't do it from an emotional place, an unhappy place. Those are always going to be diluted judgments and decisions. You always want to come from a place of calm, balance, and love. And I feel like, that term, or the saying, what would Jesus do? It's very practical. So even if you don't believe in Jesus, you don't follow Jesus, follow somebody else. The idea of what would God do in the situation? God is love, right? And so what would love look like? It would be non-judgmental. It would be accepting. It would be open as far as like solutions. Like solutions are endless. And it would be also forgiving. And sometimes the solution is to walk away. It's just reality. So those are the 5 red flags. And I hope that you found it not only to be about relationships and how you might go about your dating and how you might address things in your current relationship, but really look at it as a way to reflect on yourself and how you perceive sex, how you are actually engaging in sex, if you're present or not. Do you tend to fly off and, go somewhere else mentally? Do you enjoy it? And are you advocating for what you like? Are you just laying there and taking it? Are you just giving it, Yeah, prioritize your self-care, your mental health, and come from a place of love, and just trust that you'll find the best solution for yourself coming from that place. All right? Thanks for watching. Leave with love. And let me know, what you thought about this video, what really helped you, and maybe some things that you're going to try. And any feedback you have, it's all welcome. All right? Peace and chicken grease.
Like, subscribe, share the growth.
If you are not ready for the day, it cannot always be night.